What's up, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. We have an interview style podcast here today. I'm here with Phil. How you doing tonight?
Good.
All right. So Phil is one of our distance members. He's been kind of working on the program for quite some time now. So just as we kind of kick things off, you can kind of let the listeners know a little bit about who you are and then what you got going on right now.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, John. I'm a master's lifter, 52, been powerlifting for close to 3 years now. Um, I'm a national champion with the USPA in my age group and weight class. I'm a North American champ in the IPF in age group and weight class. And um, yeah, just set some state records in the squat, the bench, and the deadlift, and the total overall. So,
Excellent.
yeah,
So I wanted to kind of rewind a little bit and just kind of let the listeners know a little bit about like kind of how did you like first get introduced into powerlifting and what I guess kind of made you decide that this is something you wanted to pursue.
sure. I did some powerlifting in high school way back in the day, and then life got busy, and you don't get as much of a chance to lift, and you start picking up other hobbies. I'd gotten really into Spartan racing and doing some distance running, and in one of the Spartan races, I tore my meniscus and went through the rehab and got that cleaned up, and then running just wasn't ever the same. So um, I really decided to start getting into powerlifting, and um, you know started looking online to see what kind of coaching opportunities were available, and came across you in the distance program, and reached out, and it's been a really good fit.
So I guess initially like when you kind of got that injury and you kind of were looking for something else to do, um I guess what were some like of your first steps like even before I guess starting the coaching, like what were some things like what were you kind of doing for workouts? How did you kind of I guess get started in the gym like initially?
Sure. There were a few like online programs that I bought. Um, some of the guys like um, Hawthorne Johnson, who's got power lifter, or not a power lifter. He's a strongman competitor. But he had some programs out there that he put out with his coach. So I bought some of those and started working through those, and I just really didn't see any gains there. Did some of the bro workouts where you're just doing bench presses and squats and trying to max out as much as possible, and just really wasn't seeing gains there.
So when I guess when you first I guess came in contact with me, we did that initial consult. Like, what were some things that you found? I guess that were kind of really helpful to kind of at least just kind of get you started, like initially.
Sure, I think one of the good things was that you were in constant contact. We had I was able to send in videos, and you were able to make comments on the videos and make adjustments and things like that. Um, we talked in the initial consult. We talked about what kind of equipment I had access to, and at that point in time, I was just going to a traditional gym, and so you kind of developed a program for me to use the equipment there, and um, yeah.
Cool. And then as far as I guess going through like that the program and with the I guess the communication, what are some of the I guess the facets from like the technique reviews and the program itself? Like what have you found has been like I guess the most helpful in terms of like moving the needle for you, and what have you feel like has I guess made like I guess the most progress like in your lifts?
Yeah, I think kind of one of the things that I'd never had really focused on before, prior to getting involved with you, was like the rest and recovery. And, there's so many aspects to taking care of your body that a lot of people don't think about. It's more than just getting in the gym and, getting under the bar and doing as much weight as possible and trying to get sore. A lot of that stuff's just not beneficial. And so you were able to work with us on breathing techniques, looking at diet, looking at how much sleep that you're getting, trying to dial that in, and just increasing the knowledge on those types of things and those types of aspects.
So just getting into some specifics, like what are some things like I guess some things for you personally in terms of, and we can kind of go through each one. We can go through diet, sleep,
Mhm.
we can go through even like kind of the breathing stuff. What are some things I guess personally for you in terms of, we can start with diet. Like what are some things that you've kind of implemented that have, made an impact with your eating?
Sure, yeah. One of the things is, I don't track all the time, but going through some phases of tracking to kind of see where you are and make sure you're hitting those protein goals, and focusing on when you get your carbs, and making sure that you not eating fats before you get into the gym, and sometimes that can kind of upset your stomach, and making sure you're getting good carbs before you work out, and then sometimes even while you're in the middle of your workout to make sure you're optimizing those workouts.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially, I was one of those people back in the day, like where you just kind of just get calories in and you're not really kind of pay attention to the type of food or the timing of the nutrients. And I think that's definitely been like a big difference for me the last couple of years myself. And I think a lot of people, they think, just because like, we're powerlifters, we're not bodybuilders, that, that stuff isn't as important, but it definitely can make a big difference when you start to kind of dial that stuff in and kind of like learn what works for you. And I think, especially like you said, when it comes to fats, slowing things down, and then like the right type of carbs for fuel, electrolytes, especially when it's hot and you live, kind of in the South. So it could get really hot sometimes, and that could
Mhm.
be a factor as well. Um, and in terms of, I guess, like sleep and stuff, what are some, I guess, challenges that you've had with that? Because I know sometimes you're traveling, sometimes you got a hectic schedule. So what are some things that you've kind of tried to focus on to kind of improve your sleep and recovery?
Yeah, so I've tried things like melatonin to make sure I'm getting a good night's sleep. Don't always use that, but sometimes when it's needed. Um, sometimes at night, if I feel like I'm a little amped up, I'll try and do some of the breathing techniques like the box breathing
Yeah.
to try and calm down, and um, some things like that.
Yeah, I think some of that stuff, again, it's one of those things where I notice the difference between programming and coaching. So
Mhm.
you kind of mentioned that you kind of bought some programs in the past, and I think when you actually have you're working with a coach one on one, those like little things like having those conversations about nutrition, having those conversations about sleep and recovery. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight too, I forgot to go back to highlighting it. You talked about like, just tracking for a period of time, because I think sometimes the nutrition is a whole other kind of element. But I
Mhm.
do think it is good to go through periods of time where you're like a little bit more meticulous about it. So then you kind of know like what is 180 to 200 grams of protein. Like what does it actually look like? What does that look like on a plate
Mhm.
throughout the day? So the more you kind of do that, then you kind of can eyeball it a little bit better. You could be a little bit more intuitive, and you kind of know kind of the portion size that you need. How many carbs do you need? What does 50 grams of carbs look like? What does 100 grams of carbs looks like on a plate?
Mhm.
I think that's really good kind of advice for people that are kind of starting out with some of the nutritional stuff. Um, so kind of moving on to we're kind of going through the program. You do a couple of meets on your own. So when you did like I guess your first competition, I guess what are some of the challenges that you saw? And then what were some, I guess, strategies that you found helpful? Because like obviously for you, like we kind of always went in with a game plan. Sometimes the game plan went as planned. Sometimes, mistakes happen. So I guess when you were starting to actually do competitions, you went from training in the gym, you're on a structured program now. I guess what are some things that you had to, I guess, adjust going from just regular training to competing? And if you have like, I guess, any like tips or tricks or I guess kind of advice for people that are kind of doing their first competition, what are some things that you learned about like competing that has helped you like along the way?
Sure. Yeah, the first competition, I mean, I think having you there to kind of lead me through it, and actually read one of your books that talks about getting ready for your first competition. So, just implementing a lot of those strategies, making sure that your first lifts aren't too heavy, something that you can do about 3 reps with in the gym. And like you said, going in with a game plan. So you know what your first lift's going to be and what your progressions are going to be. Um, making sure that you have, sometimes meets go longer than others. So, sometimes you got to make sure that you're prepared and have enough nutrition there for you to get through the meet, especially when you have like a long day where you're starting lifting at 9 and doing your last deadlift at 5 o'clock. So you have to be prepared for those types of things. And making sure that you read through the rule book and you understand all the commands that are going to be given. Um, all the equipment requirements, because some federations have special, you can only use their particular knee sleeves or things like that. So just just making sure you're well prepared.
And and then obviously, what was really cool, and this doesn't always happen, but I try to, make it happen when I can. So even though like, you're a remote member, we did get a chance to meet in person. We did a kind of a contest in person, and it was obviously a very successful outing. So would you say are some of the differences and some of, like, I guess, the things that were helpful from, I guess, actually getting a handler like in person, and can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, having a handler, that really changes the game. Having um, people there to, if you need something to eat, that can go grab something to eat for you. People, if you have a handler there, someone who's loading your weights for you, just the little things of not having to expend energy to pick up plates and load them. Just be able to be focused on lifting, not have to worry about telling the judges what your next lifts are. Somebody that's paying attention to the time and telling you, okay, it's time to start stretching and warming up for our next set of lifts. Um, I think that can be a game changer, is having someone there to handle you and pay attention to all those details.
Excellent. So obviously you kind of mentioned that, you're in that masters category. So, some people may think like maybe they're too old to do this, or not really sure if this is for them. So I guess what advice would you give to someone that's maybe like on the fence of like they're into strength training, maybe they're like they dabble in the bench squat and deadlift now, but they're not really sure if competitions are for them, and maybe they're an older like lifter.
Hmm.
What advice would you kind of give those people that are maybe like just they're not they feel like maybe they wanted to compete, they're a little bit older? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say if it's something you're interested in, go for it. The meets, everyone at the meets are just really supportive. People are cheering you on, whether you're the lifting the lowest weight or lifting the heaviest weight. People are wanting to see you do your best, and so, um, I would just go for it, and not being afraid. It, if you follow a program that someone's putting together for you, and they're constantly giving you feedback, and um, you know, uh, injuries are definitely a part of lifting. I mean, it happens whether you're competing or not. When you're putting a lot of weight on your back or even on your arms, you can hurt shoulders and hips and legs and things like that. But being able to work around those and to recover from those. I would just not let those things stand in your way.
Excellent. And I also wanted to kind of circle back to, I guess, one more thing about as far as people like, you mentioned that when you were kind of starting out, you tried a couple of, programs yourself with not as much success. Um, it doesn't have to be like me, obviously, of course, but what are some things that you think that someone should be looking for when they are investing in a coach or they're looking to get like an online program? What are some things, I guess what have been, I know you mentioned about the communication as being a big one. Like would you say are the most important factors in having success with the remote program?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the remote program or with any program, whether you're working with someone one-on-one, it's someone that you're looking for someone that is investing in your success. Someone that genuinely cares about you and listens to you. And, you know, I think one of the big things with us is the feedback because being a master's lifter or any lifter really, you're going to have some injuries,
Yeah.
and you don't want to just keep pushing through those and make things worse and be out longer. And if you give that feedback to your coach and your coach isn't saying, well, hey, we can work around this, let's stop doing that for a while and just focus on this, or giving you alternatives, giving you stretches and things that you can do to try and um, to get those injuries recovered faster. You want to look for somebody like that, someone who really cares about you and is invested in your success.
So now I want to kind of flip the question around the other way too. So we talked about advice for people, maybe that were older. So one of the biggest challenges for myself sometimes is, I guess, trying to communicate to younger folks, the teenage lifters, the junior lifters, that they don't have injuries yet. They aren't banged up yet. And sometimes they want to do more. And sometimes they feel like maybe I'm holding them back in a sense. If you can give, maybe it could be your younger self or maybe just a younger athlete, I guess, what is some advice to those folks that are maybe, they're really excited about training. They want to do more. Even like if you want to talk about like the training frequency, like what do you think is an appropriate amount? What do you think is too much? Because I know like right now it's very popular to do like very frequent training. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about like kind of maxing out like very often. So what advice do you have to those, I guess, those younger lifters that are starting out? Like what do you think is a key factor in their success so they can stay like healthy, long term?
Sure. One is, don't let your ego get in the way. I mean, um, you're not really impressing anybody in the gym. I mean, by maxing out there, save that kind of stuff for the stage,
Yep.
and you may not feel it now, but if you keep working out with heavy frequency and high weights, heavy intensity, um, you will get injured. I mean, you've got to be able to let your body recover. The whole science behind it is when you're lifting, you're breaking down muscle tissue, right? And so you've got to let that recover. And if you don't, you go into something thinking, well, I've done this before, I can do it again, and your body's just not ready to do it, and it can lead to injury. So, um, yeah, save it for the stage. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, that is one thing that I totally agree with you. I see it very often. I see a lot of these lifters, even some high level lifters, they have their best lifts in the gym. And I think part of that is maybe due in part to social media. And I think I don't want to, obviously people that are listening to this, you probably wouldn't be listening to this without social media. So there's definitely pros and cons to it, but I think it's really important to not get into the trap of comparing yourself too much or trying to chase. When you start chasing things, I think that's when you kind of get into trouble, and just let the PRs happen when they're going to happen. I think, and save it for the actual contest. That's something that I've been trying to do better with myself too. Um, I'm actually getting ready to compete again soon at the Arnold again. So this is kind of the first time where I didn't really like, I'm trying to like not put any pressure on like having really specific goals this meet. I'm just going to try to have a really good training cycle and see kind of where I end up, and see like, I do have, some things I'd like kind of a minimum I'd like to hit in terms of my total, but not really trying to like max out any one lift and just really have a good performance. So I think that's another thing too. Like when you are competing, take what's there on that day, and you can challenge yourself, but remember it is about the total. And if you kind of injure yourself on one lift, that's gonna not so hit your lifts, save the big lifts for the platform, and take your time. Let the PRs happen when they're going to come. So I think that's some really good advice. And I think, Phil's done really well for himself. I don't remember your exact ranking, but I know that you were like top 10, even across all federations at a point in your age group, which is phenomenal. And I think it's just a really good, I think the other thing I want to highlight too, I think it's cool that like you dabbled in a little bit, when you were young, and then you kind of came back to it. So you could always come back to it. So I want to also highlight too, even if you take a break, you could, powerlifting will always be there, which other sports, like I wrestled, I played football, and, there's a life where that's going to be gone, but powerlifting, you could always come back to. So I think that's another thing I wanted to, highlight for the listeners. If you take a break from it, get healthy, life happens sometimes. Maybe you're working on a career or, starting a family, whatever, you could always kind of come back to it. So, but yeah, Phil, I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope this interview was helpful for you guys. If it was, please give it a 5-star review and check out the links in the description. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.